quite in a way, even though it's true, I've heard some of the stories, he had his issues. It just also doesn't sound great, Reggie, that you actually like fired a guy who won World Slayer. You know, it's different reason. We all get that. One thing I have a question about with this though is this is a bit of like, they call it inside baseball in America. It means like behind the scenes shit that you're only supposed to have heard if you're in the scene or whatever. All I'll say is this, Sven, right? I get the idea that when Mithy left, like, you know, you start off on your own there, and that part is fucked up, like, because with every other player, normally that was the thing that saved Reggie for all those years. People knew he was an arsehole, but there was just too many good stories of like, yeah, and then when I left, you know, he was really cool with my contract, like, he let me just go. In fact, he even told me, you know, don't worry about it, I'll just release you from your contract. You can sign. You're like the only guy ever that he was just like, in the contract that says you play for one more year. Also, I'm kicking the guy that you came here with, but you just have to play. It feels like you're the only one who ever got fucked on that for some reason.
Yeah, so when we joined TSM, we were sold the idea that TSM was a player-friendly org. That was the words they used. And it was true. I mean, everyone in TSM only had good words to say about TSM. This is back when they had a really good rep still as an org. Sure, they lost at Worlds, and people hated that they always lost at Worlds 3-3 and lost tiebreaker to Misfits and blah, 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 right? But org-wise, they were loved. Most fans by far. They had the GOATs, Double Lift and Bjergsen, most famous players in NA. They were content machines. Everything was perfect about TSM, right? So I agreed. I believed them, right? So when I asked about buyouts, all I was told was, if you don't want to play here, if you want to leave, we won't hold you. We don't want someone that doesn't want to play for our team. And I was like, I'll fucking goblin that shit up. And I was like, fuck yeah, that's right. Player-friendly org. I believed them. Every word. Then in Season 8, at the end of the year, we lost the Gauntlet. Also, we got fucked by the format. We beat 100 Thieves in the third place match, and they still qualified to Worlds because we had a terrible spring season, and same for Cloud9. So the team that we beat in the third place match went to Worlds on points. So we had to play against Cloud9, who was the second place team in the Gauntlet.
It was the championship point thing, yeah, sure.
Yes, terrible fucking format. And then we didn't go to Worlds. And I remember after we didn't go to Worlds, I told Parf, I hate NA. Even if we had won and gone to Worlds and done well there, I would still tell you that I don't want to play here because I don't like playing in NA, the culture, the people. I had no friends. Like in EU LCS in 15, 16, 17, people would just go to the same bar or same like area every single weekend after the second day of LCS.
Yes.
And just meet there. There was no like...
It's like a social scene,
talking.
right?
Yeah, you would just go there and people would just be there. There was no calling people, hey, what's up? There was no like parties. You would just go to the same place every week and hang out. And it was really important for me to have that. In NA, people were very private. Everything was held at someone's house, someone's apartment or whatever. So I didn't have any life. I had no friends, no girlfriend that went to shit. And then I realized I'm just not happy here. People aren't like me at all. I don't fit in kind of thing. So I asked Parf to just let me leave back to EU. I watched Worlds that year as well, and I was hoping I could join G2. This was way later, but I told Parf the day after we lost Gauntlet that I wanted to leave. And regardless of outcome, I wanted to leave. And he told me he will try. Fast forward, he says that they couldn't get anyone. Parf wanted to sell me and get someone else, but he couldn't find someone that was, his words were, a suitable replacement. Which, honestly, from a business point of view, I understand it. Like, selling a good player to get a worse player isn't worth it. They wanted to get upset, Hansama, they didn't want to come. They couldn't find anyone that was, like, good enough in their eyes, so they just decided to jail me. To be fair, like, I signed a contract, and it's fair enough. Yeah. Like, honestly, like, if I was them, I might have done the same thing. I still hate them for it, because of what I was promised.
Yeah.
But I understand why they did it. But then the biggest problem I had wasn't that. It was that there was a lot of problems with Hanser in the team. So the org agreed that they wanted to replace Hanser with someone. And to get someone to replace him, they had to remove Mithy to get an import slot.
Right.
To get Broken Blade.
Right.
Now, Broken Blade, obviously a good player, obviously turned out to be LCS champion and LCS champion, gone to Worlds, done well for himself. But at the time, he was a random from Turkey.
Yeah, TCL or whatever, yeah.
Yeah. And I didn't think it was worth it to kick Mithy, my only support player in my whole career, just to get Broken Blade over Hanser, despite the problems that some people had with Hanser. So I felt like TSM just fucked me in every way possible, right? Like, not only did they jail me, which is fair enough, well, whatever, then they kick Mithy against my wishes, and then they get Broken Blade. It seemed all like, this is what you're kicking him for? You're screwing my whole like life over to get this guy? Now, obviously, I love Broken Blade. He's a really good guy. One of my best friends in esports, like best teammates I've ever had. One of them at least. So I didn't mind in hindsight, but holy fuck was I pissed that year about that whole offseason, how things went down. And yeah, I mean, obviously, like, that whole year was a fiesta. We had Greg and Acadian as junglers. We played Acadian in Spring Split because Greg had wrist issues. But then I griefed the Spring Finals. I still feel guilty about that one. I think that my teammates deserved to win.
Was it just like a brain fart moment? Like, did you actually, was there some actual plausible reason why you did those moves?
I don't remember. I just felt safe, you know, like, it's kind of like a thing where the more safety tools you have, QSS, S-Release, Flash, the more you think you can do. You know, back then, I think I just wanted to get some gold off Kleptomancy. Like, hit 1Q, get some gold, leave. I don't remember the moment that well. Actually, I remember games from like 8 years ago, like it was yesterday. But that game, I just don't remember at all.
Your brain's it's like trauma. It's protecting you from it.
Literally, I think so. I remember game 1. Okay. I remember game 2, 3, 4. But that moment in that game, I don't remember at all. It's kind of weird, but I don't hate myself for it. I think it sucks for my teammates. They didn't win. You know, I think Acadian, I think Smoothie, like.
Could have changed everything if they win, right?
Yeah, it would have. Possibly.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think we would have gone to MSI and done as well as TL did, beating IG and stuff. I think we had a fluke to even get to the finals. But, you know, we got a reverse sweep on C9 in the semis before finals. So I think it was a fluke, the whole thing. But we could have won the series if I had played better. To be fair, game 3 and 4 were griefed by different people than me. Like Acadia and Bjergsen Soul lost the game 4, I think it was, the game they played Rek'Sai, Sandra against Hillian, Garner, and they got 2-2 double killed and stuff like that, right? So I don't think the final was only my fault, but if I had played better, we would have won. That's the mindset I always had, that you can't control what other people, but if I had played better in the finals, we would have won, right? So while I shouldn't be blamed by everyone else only, I only blame myself.
Do you think is it kind of bullshit though that like that moment they tried to make that like define you basically, even though you've won championships since? It's like I noticed what they do now is this, dude. They'll actually let you, like in C9, you can be the best ADC. They'll say you're the all pro one, but the second you do another bad death or you lose a game, it's like you said before. It just goes back to like, oh, he's always in it. They make it sound like it's that game every time. Yes,
there was a lot of rewriting history after that finals. There was a lot of like making it seem like I had a tendency to get caught, which I really didn't have at all. It just happened like that one time, and then, everyone gets caught here and there. It just happens to everyone. But when I did it, it was a big deal always. And I felt like people held it over my head for a long time in a serious way. So that was kind of triggering me when I was in TSM and even 9 years later, right? But I didn't care much about it, honestly. Like, I had fun doing the thing to Jensen. I don't regret it. I loved every part of it, and in hindsight, knowing the outcome, I wouldn't change anything about the finals. It's just how it is, Sometimes you fuck things up. The fact that mine happened in game 5 is what it is. I don't think about it much at all, honestly. I hated my life for a couple of days, but I moved on, and I'm good with it. I won the LCS the literal year later, same split. So that's when I guess I finally put it all to rest. I became the first player to win EU and NA, both LCSs, and I was like, yeah, I'm good now. Okay. Now I'm like, I've certified that, I can do it. So
one thing I did want to ask about TSM was obviously the fact that like Bjergsen was there for a million years with all these different teammates, all in and out. Like I've heard so many different versions of stories about what his role was in TSM. Like some people basically made it sound like he's one of the reasons why basically TSM kept firing a bunch of coaches. Like if he didn't sort of vibe with the coach, he's the one who could go to Reggie and sort of be like, look, I don't like this guy, or he's doing these things wrong. If people don't know, it was famous in these years that the coach would just get fired after like the first year or the first split. People even get replaced mid-splits, some crazy shit like that. Then at the same time though, there's scenarios where I look at some of the people getting signed and I'm like, Did he really vibe with them? I don't know if he would actually. Maybe sometimes he had to take who they said. Similarly, in the game, he could absolutely, in like a big playoff game, he could be the best player. Like in that season 9 one, he probably was the best mid laner. He was fucking amazing. He was having so many sick playoff series where he was carrying games. But then he also would have games where he would just pick a mage and just sit under the tower. Like you'd be like, it's just the same guy. Like, can you explain this Bjergsen to me? What was it like when you played with him? Who was he?
It's a long story. It's going to take a long time to talk about it in depth. I think Bjergsen, to summarize it shortly, had flaws both as a player and as a person, but he was always a good teammate, very professional, and he always did what he thought was best for the team. He always tried hard at every point of every single day, and he was just... I really enjoyed working with Bjergsen in 18-19. He was very professional, and he was very like business only, which I didn't like that much because in EU, people are very open. Like I met Perks' parents, I met Mitty's parents, his mom anyways, Pekke's parents. Like I met their families, we would hang out together, we would do a lot of things. But Bjergsen, I would never do anything with him as a person. And that sucked for some people. I don't mind too much, but for Mitty, he needs like social stuff like that. So some teams are different. In NA, people are a lot more private back then than they were in EU. People were very open and just, I guess it's just how it is culturally. But as for the coaches stuff and the play stuff, Bjergsen never like single-handedly decided anything from my perspective. But Reginald did a lot of bad moves when the team was losing. The worst thing that happened in TSM would be when we go 0-2. Okay, next week, again, 0-2. Next week, 1-1. And then it happens. Reginald comes in, watches scrims, starts flooding our reviews with like bad takes, wrong takes, and starts having this massive presence in the room, this like uncomfortable presence of whatever he says, you have to just agree with it so that you can move on quickly, so that he won't take up more time in the review, so you can talk about something useful. It became a trend in later years when I left the team. I talked to their players and they asked them like, does Parv still tell new people to not disagree with Reginald? And they're like, yeah. They tell you like, just don't say anything, just agree, and then you move on so he will stop talking and you can start talking about something useful faster. And I was like, damn. You know, like when Bjergsen and Parv tell you to not argue with him because it's that bad, it's a problem, right?
Yeah.
So that's one thing. Reginald would do that a lot, where if you're losing, he would come to the scrims, give bad takes about Bjergsen shouldn't play TF, Broken Blade sucks to Sana, talk about communication, ask you why you don't dodge Kaiser Q, even though it's targeted. this kind of shit, right? Just a lot of really shit takes, bad takes, and it was the big problem for me because he would come in, make things worse when you have to really use your time in review to talk about something useful, and you just couldn't. So that was the problem. And he would also undermine the coaches really hard, whether it was Song, whether it was Six, whether it was Lost Boy or Parv, and what was his name, Goldman. All the people that we had were just like sitting there watching him waste our time. So I work with some big bosses in esports, Becky, Carlos, Jack, Reginald, and they all have their qualities, good and bad, but none of the CEOs would ever step into the actual game, despite two of them being ex-pro players as well, and better than Reginald as well, for what it's worth it, right? So it was weird for me to see him just come into our house and start, just machine gunning bad takes. Blah, blah, blah. I was like, what the fuck, man? What's going on here? So we had a clash one time that getting into isn't that important. But yeah, a lot of the rash decisions were made by Reginald like that. I always supported Bjergsen's ideas for the most part. I agree with most of his takes about rosters, about coaching staff, and this kind of stuff. Song wasn't fit to run a team because of his English ability was really bad in 2018. And he also just said the words to me that he gave up on Mike Young in the middle of the split. He thought he was just too bad. So that's not going to work, right? I don't even remember who was our coach in 2018. Was it Parv? I don't know. So that's how bad it was. I don't remember like that year, like that summer split. Maybe it was Parv. Last point, maybe? I think we got 6 in 2019.
Yes.
From what I remember. So actually, let me just fucking
It looks like it was Song and Path, yeah.
Let me see here.
And Lost Boy was there at one point in time in summer.
TSM 2018-19 finals. Let's see who's behind us. I'm not gonna watch the game. Oh, Game 5 finals. The first one that comes up.
And there was Peter Zhang in Season 9 as well.
Oh, Peter Zhang.
He was still there.
Oh, the shit, man. The king. Yeah, it's Six and Goldman in 2019. I thought Six was not a bad coach. I think he made some wrong decisions regarding the Greg Acadian situation. I personally thought we should have started with Greg, but then he got a wrist injury. So then we started with Acadian. Then we made finals and we lost. My bad, guys. I think we should have started Acadian in summer as well. Because we had a fluke, went to finals, almost won. Nice. At this point, I thought it would be better to just keep Acadian playing the whole time instead of being nice and giving Greg a chance, because we were just wasting games to test Greg. And the way they were doing it was also bad. They were like basing off of wins, but you're playing against different strength of schedule, right?
Yeah.
So it was just like such a, what the fuck is this even, like, you're basing it off of wins? But bro, like, they're playing against different teams, different strength of schedule, right? So that was just fucking stupid. And then we have Rift Rivals coming up, and we use Rift Rivals as a final decision maker to who should be starting. And then when things didn't work out, because we had like spent the whole summer split griefing ourselves with trying different junglers in scrims and in LCS, we finally just randomly moved up Spica from our academy team, I think he was, in the middle of the gauntlet after we lost in summer playoffs to C9, maybe? I don't remember.
A clutch.
Yeah, that was in the gauntlet, but C9 in playoffs.
I think it was both. Fair enough.
It's possible. And then we sub in Spica, who I actually agree with the decision too, because things just weren't working for us. We couldn't scrim, we couldn't win anything. So like the whole year was a mess because of decisions that were made, but I agree with some of them. Like the Spica situation I agree with. And I think we replaced our coach for summer as well. I don't know why we did that, to be fair. That was a mistake, I think. There was a lot of like irrational, we lost, change something fast kind of decisions made. And whereas in G2, we lost, stuck together for a whole year, right? After Worlds. No rush changes. We had a really tough time in 2017 after IEM with burnout, with people feeling homesick. But we talked about it, we pushed through, stuck together, and we got better as a result of it. So TSM was a very different situation where like there was a rush change every 6 months. We had like 4 junglers in 2 years. That's a problem, I think. So yeah, TSM was a mess, rightfully so. But I don't think it was Bjergsen's fault at all. I think that for the most part, I mean, I'm sure he had I think of all the players in TSM, he had the most say, for sure. Don't get me wrong here, right? Like, if he wanted something, there would have to be a lot of people against him for it to not happen. But for the most part, I agree with most of his decisions or his takes and his ideas. And I think it's true that he regressed as a player. Most people do, to be fair. And he became, he always hated the words passive, even though that's what he became in the end towards later years. But he really always just did what he thought was best, and he did come out clutch in some series for us. But he was the only reason we were in spring finals in 19 in the first place.
Yes,
he hard carried. I remember we were 0-2 down 5k gold, and he had this Akali TP flank on C9 against C9 in the 19 playoffs, right? Spring playoffs. He was the reason we were there in the first place. Like I said, he hard carried a lot of moments for us. Sure, he was not good at Urgot and was it Aatrox in the season 9 or 8 gauntlet if the Worlds Rookie in the Shy won Worlds, right? But I don't know. I think he was a great player and a good teammate, and I enjoyed playing with him so much that I wanted to join C9 in 2022.
Yeah, if people don't know, he could have. It was TL or C9 he was choosing between, right?
The TL year, yeah. In hindsight, I'm very happy he didn't. It's such to say, but it's true. Jensen was someone I'd rather play with. In hindsight, I didn't actually know how much Jensen and I got along, because I never actually talked to Jensen personally before 2022. He's my teammates. I talked to him the first time for real at Worlds 2021 after they lost. TL lost in Iceland, right? We're in the lobby talking together, and that's the first time I actually like talked to him after the whole, thing. So I realized how much I got along with him. But yeah, I thought Bjergsen was a class act, professional, and a good player and teammate. But he has flaws, both as a person, as a player. We all do. But I admired some of his attributes, whatever you call it, and I thought some of them he could improve on. I think that's the case for every player. But I don't think he was the reason TSM was ran into the ground. I think most of that is on Reginald being too involved. And I remember when Bjerg became a coach for TSM in 2021.
Yep.
Was it? Yeah. He had this rule that Reginald could not step 1 foot inside their scrim room, or he would leave the team immediately. Like his contract would just disappear.
Okay.
And it was a statement to how the only person or people that Reginald actually respected was Bjergsen and Parv, which again brings back to the review thing where like new people were told to not interfere with him or argue with him because it was a waste of time. Just say, I agree, or like, yeah, okay, and then you can move on, talk about something actually useful, right? And actually get better at the game.
When you
Bjergsen knew how to handle him. Yeah, sorry, Bjergsen knew how to handle him, so he made that clause. I don't know if it was a real clause, but it sounded like it was real, so he stayed away. And that's why I think, Bjergsen, he had a handle on Reginald in that sense. So, yeah, I don't know, it's an interesting dynamic that they had.
See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.